We have seen black goo and lived to tell the tale. I don't know about you, but the little Sims and workers and resources really dig stuff that squirts out of the ground. There's always the risk it's a broken municipal pipeline for the toilets, but legends say that out there under the fields there is the good kind of black sludge, and that sludge may well be colored gold. Last time in the Soviet Republic of Arab map, we built humongous buildings and connected them with trains, and crushed the biggest expense item our people had suffered under for decades. Now we're approaching a future in which every worker and every peasant who wants some of our domestically refined blue chemicals only has to follow the big blue truck to the municipal warehouse and get all the stuff they need. There is a dark cloud to go with this silver lining, however, because our bold scientists at the Cronenberg Scientific Production Association are telling us that the blue trucks need their own substances too. Thankfully, it just means fuel. So far, we've built a robust system for supplying fuel across Arab map, with a dedicated logistical office that buys fuel abroad and moves it to a centralized storage, and then through a network of distribution offices, it trickles around to the petrol stations and, most importantly, enterprises and institutions with large vehicle fleets. So how do we go about cutting that buying from abroad part? To do that, we just need to get ourselves an oil refinery. Yes, just one. Unlike the chemicals factories, this one can afford to be a loner, as it cranks out 46,000 tons of fuel a year. If we extrapolate Arab map's current consumption, it would be enough for a population of over 400,000, which... good luck getting there. In other words, one refinery is plentiful for ourselves and for some exports, and the daily 75 tons of bitumen it makes only makes the exports idea even juicier. So is the refinery worth it? After all, it gobbles up ungodly amounts of oil. But even if you buy it all, the profitability of the plant is excellent at 79%, making you almost 40 grand every day and about 14 million a year at full capacity. This is in addition to the fact that you're cutting down the effective price of the fuel you consume from okay to ultra cheap. In 1985, importing a ton of fuel costs 215 rubles. Making 1 ton of fuel at your own refinery takes 2 tons of oil and 4 man-days for 82 rubles, which is only 38% of the original price. But wait! There's more! If you build a refinery right now, then for every ton of fuel you make and consume, you sell 600 kilos of top-grade bitumen, which drops the cost to minus 111 rubles. That's right! Making your own fuel not only crushes the costs, but actually earns you money, and the only thing you need is to get the trade infrastructure running, which is actually the best part. With foreign pipeline connections, you can let the pipes do all the work. Just bring those workers into the refinery, because petrochemicals must flow. Which leads us to the investment it takes. The oil refinery is one of the bigger and more expensive buildings you can construct in the game, but the cost is still rather tame at just under 500,000 rubles, and at full capacity it pays off in only 12 days. In terms of pure money-making, it's a tremendous deal. Remember that the big chemical plant costs twice as much and pays off much slower, generating only 9 million a year versus the refinery's 14. We are looking at nuclear fuel levels of big stacks here, and you should really consider prioritizing the oil refinery as a mid-game development, building it as soon as you have the necessary tech and the cash flow to cover the expenses. There is a bit of a catch that makes entry into the refining business a lot bumpier though, and it's the pipeline infrastructure you need to move the inputs and outputs around. It takes lots of steel and mechanical components to build, and as such, it's predictably expensive. One pumping station has to be built for every 574 meters of pipeline, meaning that you spend about 150 grand for every 600 meters of pipe infrastructure, not counting the necessary roads and electrical connections. And if your pipes add up to 1,800 meters in total, you've already doubled the price of that refinery. This is a very good reason to build it near the border, especially if your own consumption of fuel is still low. In my example, the plant is about a kilometer away, and I import oil and export fuel via pipe connections and bring bitumen close to the border to truck it out. All in all, about 3 kilometers and 750,000 rubles worth of pipelines. Expensive? Yes. But it is still under 3 weeks of profits for a fully occupied refinery, which still shines wonderfully despite the pricey pipes. Nevertheless, those pricey pipes kind of cripple the second item on our agenda today, and it's the oil. Imported oil predictably takes up 79% of the refinery's production costs, and while pump jacks do eat some electricity, domestic oil is an order of magnitude cheaper than imported stuff. And if you fully supply your refinery with it, you can cut its costs 5 times over and boost the profitability to a miraculous 95% for 46,000 rubles daily and almost 17 million annually in earnings. Great, isn't it? Not really. The problem is once again in the pipes. Meeting the demand of one refinery takes 36 perfect quality pump jacks. That's 350 grand to just build the jacks themselves. But then there is the cost of connecting them with pipes, and that piles up very quickly. Look at these 3 pump jacks we built across the river in the 60s to feed a power plant and because they enhanced the view. The pipe connections to the nearest pumping station alone add up to 600 meters. Now, these jacks aren't perfect, but they do push a decent 17.5 tons of oil downstream every day. To fully feed a refinery, though, you need over 14 groups of pump jacks like that, meaning 8.5 kilometers and 2 million rubles in just the short connecting sections of the pipes. What the trunk lines merging the flow from them could cost depends on your situation, but it can easily ramp up to 3 to 4 million, 10 times the price of the refinery. And given that domestic oil supply increases its annual profitability by that 3 million, we can expect this to only pay off in about a year or even more. We are not even counting the roads and the electrical connections for the pump jacks, as well as the fire stations you need to build and man in order to cover the more remote oil deposits. This is a very slow-burning investment, so the obvious step here is to rely on foreign oil in your refinery operations, since it's already extremely lucrative. Domestic oil production should be deprioritized and built up to gradually replace the imports whenever it's convenient, and if you have the money and nothing better to build. With all of this in mind, what if we just say screw the refinery, screw good sense, and go pump the oil abroad? How would that work? Well, what do you think? Let's look at our 3 pump jacks example again. It has 600 meters of pipe plus a pumping station for the group, and the group itself is about a kilometer away from the border. So we add another pump, a border connection building, and an additional 1,000 meters of pipes. Put together, this costs more than 500,000. The jacks push 17.5 tons at 29 rubles a ton, and discounting the electricity, they get you about 500 rubles a day. Which means that if you just sell the oil, the investment pays off in 3 years. 3 years sounds more like a jail sentence than a business venture. So what if we then feed that 17.5 tons of oil as inputs for other factories to reduce their costs? If we look at the chemicals and plastics factories, the refinery and the thermal power plant, we get roughly the same underwhelming result: 970 days. But that is an improvement, albeit it's only 10-11%. So if you're looking to develop some oil fields after all, make sure you've got something to feed that petroleum into. The best option here is to obviously get back to the good old refinery idea. However, if you're looking for a low-hassle, build-and-forget kind of export, I'd recommend the power plant. It is pricey, but with only 15 workers, it just sits there and does its job. It is particularly good for getting a stream of dollars trickling in, since high-voltage lines are relatively cheap, and compared to just selling oil, the amount of Western currency you get with electricity is higher by a factor of 4, or even as high as 15, depending on the year. So there, the people of Soviet Republic of Arab Map collectively condemn oil as revisionist, at least for the foreseeable future, and I'm sure we still have better things to build and bigger needs to cover.